Good Friday morning, guys. My name is Jerry Miller, and welcome to Real Talk, an insider's guide to real estate, life, and the pursuit of happiness. We're live on the I Love CVille Network across Charlottesville, Albermarle County, the Samuel Miller District, Nelson County, the Commonwealth, the country, and the world. And today's Friday program, Coffee with the Candidates, presented by the very good friend, Dave Fafara of Shenandoah Joe's. Dave, we love the support. We're grateful for you, and your coffee, my friend, is absolutely fantastic. Cheers. Judah Wickower, my friend, let's go to the studio camera, and let's get the gentleman on camera with many media outlets currently streaming the show as we speak. So, Keith Smith, you know. Jesse Rutherford, you know. Absolutely. This gentleman you're about to get to know. And Jim Andrews, why don't we start the program with Mr. Andrews, an introduction for you, sir, for all those that are watching.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for having me on the show. I really appreciate the opportunity. I'll try to keep an intro brief because I'm sure I'll hit a lot of points as we go through our different discussions. But just to let you know, I first arrived in Albermarle County in 1979 to go to UVA Law School. Fell in love with the forests, the mountains, the town, the university, the vibrant life here, and the wood and the rural area, and most importantly, fell in love with my wife now of almost 40 years, who was born and raised in the Samuel Miller District. I did take her away for a few of those years, but because she has family here, we would continue to come back regularly. We had property here, and so we've always considered this sort of the place to be. And having retired as a physics professor, I know there's a little switch there from law to physics, but having retired as a physics professor, when we came back, we were happy to settle into Samuel Miller again on property that we've had for decades. And here we are. So.
Here we are.
So you just raised the IQ of this. You and Liza has just raised the IQ pretty high on this table. This is going to
Don't equate degrees in IQ, but
got it.
I got lots of letters.
Yeah.
Congratulations on the 40 years. I'm at 35, so we're trying to
almost 40. Almost 40.
Trying to catch up with you on that.
39
so Jesse, for maybe one person who doesn't know you want to do a quick intro yourself?
I mean, for the person who's not watching, my name is Jesse Rutherford, Board of Supervisor, and who represents Livingston and Schuyler, the East District. I'm happy to be here. I chair the Broadband Authority, chair the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission, and several other items, working on regional housing partnership and how we can work on affordable housing, working on, of course, even not just, of course, getting Nelson County all the fiber in the world, but trying to see how we can partner up with other counties and expedite it. So, lots of great opportunities out there. I've been proud to have participated and look forward to doing a couple 4 years to go. Yeah.
So the format today is we're going to kick out a couple of general questions, and I can already see Jerry's fingers flying over
you got media outlets watching right now. You got people giving some props to Jesse Rutherford, literally. Jim Andrews has got a handful of questions out of the gate already for the candidate. Right. Keith Smith, it's going to be a hot show.
It's going to be, brother. So, Jim, we're going to start with you a little bit. So, pretty lofty question. What made you decide to do this? What made you decide to throw your hat in the ring? And I know there's some clarification you'd like to give on that. So what made you throw your hat in the ring?
There are different ways to answer that question, blame it on COVID or something. But
well, those degrees you have.
My wife will tell you I'm a worrier. And so I would like to answer that question by saying, that it is a lot my worries that led me to want to contribute in this way. I'm a scientist and an environmentalist, and been concerned about the environment for a long time through work at the National Advisory Committee of the Union of Concerned Scientists, and at the National Park Service through an institute called Skutik Institute. I have strong interest in education as an educator, as a son of a teacher, as a high school teacher, a brother of a grade school teacher, a big believer in public education and want to support the schools. I have been working for several years here as a volunteer at the Legal Aid Justice Center, and have been very concerned about housing issues in that capacity and worried about affordable housing. And so affordable housing issues are going to come up. And
they have right now.
and we are I manage farmlands, farm and forest lands that we have in the rural part of Samuel Miller District, and I'm very worried about land use issues, very concerned about the rural character and what it takes to be able to do farming. I become more and more aware of the challenges involved. Everyone I know who does that has not just 2 jobs, but
Right.
more than 2 jobs in order to make ends meet. So, these are all different things that led me to say I'll take this on. Now, there were, some influencing factors were that Liz was stepping down. I had found that out from friends who approached me and encouraged me to run.
Liz Palmer's the incumbent.
Liz Palmer is the incumbent. She's been there for her 8th year, and I think she's done a great job, and I'm very happy to have her endorsement. And we talked about a correction. As I was hardly handpicked, I approached her when I had heard that she was stepping down, and had been approached by other people suggesting that I run, and I wanted to learn more about the office and what was involved. And I'm still learning.
Well, you're going to be learning constantly. I've been doing this for quite a few decades, and everybody, and Jesse will share with this, you're learning every time that you're doing.
Every meeting.
So, Jesse, top 1 or 2, 3 things you accomplished in your first term, and maybe what you want to accomplish in your second term.
Yeah, so of course, you guys were some of the first to hear about us getting universal internet connection, guaranteed fiber internet access to every home that didn't have anything close to a gig available. And so all the homes, which means all the homes in Nelson County are going to have access to, fiber internet, and that's a very exciting.
It's by 2023, right?
Oh, yeah, and hopefully we're going to be shaving some time off.
Do we want to?
Hopefully we're going to be shaving some time off.
I'm trying to bait you a little bit, buddy.
We'll get there later, but that's one big accomplishment. A couple other big accomplishments in my mind was, of course, partnering up, getting the library done in Lovingston, helping to create some more vibrant township there, and also expediting and trying to make a plan for revitalizing the Lovingston streetscape. I hope that in this coming spring that we're going to have some pretty solid plans and start asking for some solid dollar numbers too, on top of all the grants we've asked. So, that's big piece of it. And, I can't go without saying, with Schuyler is getting some of the largest investment in that community that's had since the 70s.
So what's the investment?
It is getting fiber internet throughout. Wow. It is getting I think it's a 180-foot cell phone tower, which that place desperately needs. So it's going to be getting that infrastructure.
You get some water and sewer improvements.
And we're doing some water and sewer improvements in there. Just not only to update that, but to improve the environment. There's some definite improvements for a system that's from the early 1900s.
So we were doing some 1970s reference with the Area Broadband Authority ABA, but the other 70s reference is the Waltons Museum.
Absolutely,
so for those
family.
Those have not been up there. It's a pretty neat little visit to go see where John Boy grew up.
And it is so awesome just to see the Walton Museum, and of course all the hard work that Carol Johnson's put in creating the not exact replica, but just close enough as you can for the actual Walton's home. I do suggest everyone take a chance, get down to Schuyler, check it out. And with the new investments in that community, I'm really excited to see the future. I think it's got a good potential to be a midway point for a lot of people in Charlottesville and want to raise their kids. So hopefully we're going to have some.
Well, when the soapstone plant was operating in the 1800s and 1900s, it actually had more folks than the city of Charlottesville.
It did. As
most folks don't know that.
Schuyler, at that time, something that's really important to know, it was immune to essentially the entire Depression because you had
Soapstone.
jobs out the yin-yang out there. I mean, it was like several thousand at any given time, and for that, they actually were driving people from different parts of Albermarle on the train, dropping them off for work, so that they can get the job done. It was thousands of jobs.
And people don't know that there was actually a train that went from Charlottesville to Schuyler, right, or somewhere.
Somewhere in the Albemarle region. And picked people up, dropped them off. I mean, it was. I mean, truth be told, Schuyler was the backbone of Nelson County for many decades, and was responsible for what Nelson is today.
I got something for Jesse. We got a lot of stuff for you, Jesse Rutherford.
I bet.
Already on the feed here. All right, so this is from Tanya Lynn. Is it Bodick? Tanya, thank you for watching the program. Jesse Rutherford would have my vote if I was in his district. He works hard and he loves his county. That said, I'd like that Firefly to come to my area much quicker, but I'm thankful to know it's coming.
Yes. So Tanya, I think about you all the time in that road that you live on. I will say it's just a few houses away from me, as the crow flies. And I think a lot of those areas in between. Of course, we've really struggled in trying to get those not high-dense populated areas fiber, because obviously you want to get the 20 people per mile, et cetera, et cetera. Tanya, you just stay tuned, because in our November Board of Supervisor meeting, we're going to be making a very exciting, hopefully, deal. I ain't going to knock on wood now. And I will say this is going to expedite a lot. And
there you go. Yeah. That's fair.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
Jesse Rutherford. Jim, you got some coming in? Are you ready to rock and roll?
Shoot me.
You ready? All right. Let's start with broadband. Albermarle County, southern portion. Where do you want to start with that? You got 3 voters asking about this on the show.
Right, and it's a very high priority, something that I think we're a little bit behind the 8 ball. Obviously, Nelson County's done a great job. Fortunately, we do have ABBA working with a consortium, and the consortium, I think, will help smooth things over, get things going a little faster to the various areas. I don't think it can come fast enough. I think there's going to be a lot of competition for workers, a lot of competition for equipment, and we need to get the ball rolling and get that locked in so that we can perform. I feel for the people of my district who live in the southern part, but even where I live, which isn't that far from Charlottesville, not only is internet horrible, but we also have issues with cell service,
Right.
and we've had some serious issues with landlines from time to time, and there's limited amount that sometimes the Board of Supervisors can directly do for some of these things. Obviously, the broadband is an area where we have some impact, and I hope, if nothing as a bully pulpit, we have some impact in terms of other services as well. So,
Well, Albemarle County with our lovely ABBA, and I just can't get this Dancing Queen song out of my head. I know Jerry will not sing.
No. Thank you.
But it's moving forward. A lot of folks don't know that, and we might want to try to get that out. There is now a relationship between Dominion Power, Firefly, and frankly, what it is a finance. It's a money thing, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right. So everybody's. I think it was like $300 million.
It's a huge pot.
there's
It's a
definitely a
huge
pot of
pot.
money
Huge
that
pot.
everyone's chasing, but
Sure.
we're going to get some of that, and
Sure.
it'll help things happen.
Yeah. I mean, with the TJPDC, our partnership there, that's going to hopefully be a huge chunk.
Yeah.
So that's the Planning District Commission that this gentleman happens to be the chair of.
Right, and you're on.
There was I'm just the treasurer. I'm supposed to bow every time I say
Yeah.
that.
Jesse,
Right.
Yeah.
giving you for you right there. And it's valid
Thank
for you.
I appreciate that.
More. Do you want to finish the thought? Anything you want to add there? Do you want more commentary?
Yeah,
Questions?
more commentary. Internet's super important.
I'm going to say that, I started this by saying that I worry about the environment, I worry about education, I worry about equity. Tell me where broadband doesn't hit every single one of these issues. I worry about business. I worry about things that really do have a broadband could have an impact on. Obviously, everybody who was in school and had to try to do school remotely, broadband made that accessible, and it made it unfair for some people who didn't have any access. So it's an equity issue. People work from home; they need broadband. It's going to help relieve sometimes just traffic and roads impact because people can work from home and can do things from home. Broadband.
Jerry and I have been talking about this for some time. This is now a utility. This is
absolutely.
no different than
Absolutely.
power. This is
Right.
no different than water.
Yeah.
This is no different than sewer. And back in the 30s,
Rural electrification, right.
and this is really a rejuvenation of that basic program. I guess it's taking a different shape and all this. But in essence, that's what it is. It's become a required utility. In my space and in Jesse's space, what's the first question that I'm asked is, it's not, does it have water? It's not, does it have
Right,
sewer?
right.
Not, does it have power? That's all pretty much a given.
What's your rate?
What's the utility? What's the broadband, and what's the upload and download speed?
That's right.
Right, because you can have broadband.
Oh, yeah, and
but-
that's actually a big issue because we do have a lot of places where they say, well, it's broadband, but, if you don't hit at least 25 or
Right.
more, you're not there. And sometimes they say it is, and it's questionable. So I think there's going to be a lot of data to look at and a lot of cooperation, I think, by people who live in these areas to make sure that we know what speeds they're really getting.
So back on the
address
cell
that.
side,
Sure.
the actual
Yeah.
phone side,
Right.
we had, I think, Jerry, what was it? I think it was the Fluvanna County Board of Supervisor candidates we had here, and one of the struggles that they had. Oh no, it was Ned and Diantha.
Yeah.
And it was
Last Friday.
Yeah, last Friday.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. So it was about the site distance, right,
Right.
and all the stuff. So if cell towers come back on in your district, and they have to see each other, would you think you would support it, or so how would your feeling be if you start having more cell towers coming up in your district? Because that's the only way you're going to fix the cell.
That question
absolutely.
is
I
on the
understand.
feed.
I understand. And unfortunately, I think some of what sometimes happens is that the cell companies want to put towers where it may be, good service on Interstate 64 or other places where there are a lot of transit traffic, and not so interested in putting cell towers where you've got people who are in their homes, and it's a matter of safety, health and safety.
Because nobody
That-
uses landlines anymore.
Right, that they can be able to access emergency services and using a cell phone. And so my question would be with any cell phone tower is to look at, are there health and safety issues surrounding having this cell tower there? And if so, then I'm not going to say, blanket that I'm
Yeah,
for
sure, of
every
course.
cell tower, but I think it's very important to make allowances for cell towers that are going to impact the health and safety of residents of.
So Jesse, you can probably
Albermarle.
jump in a little bit this in Nelson County, but I know I can talk about this from Fluvanna County's perspective. It's the EMS service and the fire service are using cells now, right? They're not really using radios that much, and they're using cell phones and
phones and radio.
and what it's affecting health and safety and response times and so forth and so on. It's a real issue. Any thoughts
Yeah,
on that?
I mean, of course, so one important thing is when you talk about 911, we call those like dark areas, areas that there's no radio reception, so one big thing that Nelson County did years ago was there was a grant available, and how we could justify some of that cell tower area, because you're right, there's a lot of corporations that don't want to put a cell tower where they don't have justifiable means to get a return on investment. Makes sense, right? And that's why that government-private partnership is so critical. So some of that, there's some opportunities with 911. You can get some grants out there to try to resolve those areas that don't have that area. So then you get a tower, and of course the top of it is a 911 dedicated, whether it's radio, et cetera. But then also Verizon comes on the back end and rents that tower, and you get another spot. So in some of those areas, that's a very big tactic a lot of our localities have used, and I would of course suggest that there.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So questions coming in from Neil Williamson, President, Free Enterprise Forum. Eric LaFontaine, we will get to your comment and question as well right after Neil's. Eric lives in my district, is a business owner at Ben Barbecue in Scottsville. This is from Neil Williamson specifically for Jim. How does Jim feel about expanding the development areas that were established in 1980 to create more affordable housing?
Hear, hear.
Well, Neil,
You knew this was coming from Neil.
I suspected it was
Yeah.
coming. I'm aware of his white paper, and I do want to emphasize that I'm not a big fan of expanding into the rural areas arbitrarily. Any expansion would have to be done very carefully. I do think there are still available places to develop in the designated areas and to redevelop, and intend to, watch that issue very closely and not suggest that we're going to change those lines.
So let's play into that. Let's expand that a little bit because yesterday I did a moderation of the Regional Housing Partnership. We were talking these same topics. So let's say we're not going to grow the growth areas, but we've got to figure out a way to turn red tape into green tape.
Absolutely.
Right? So let's talk a little bit about that. So if we're saying we're not growing the growth areas, we know because we looked. I shared with Jerry yesterday. Last 7 days, we're going backwards. We're having 50 more. Last week, we had 50 more homes in the Charlottesville region go into pending that went active. That's the largest number since I've been tracking it for a while. Right. 2 months ago, we were on par. Yeah. We were going one on, one off, one on, one off. So it's going the other way. So we've got to figure out a way to increase, it's an unpleasant term for some folks, but to increase this density within these growth areas. We're not growing the growth areas. So how in God's holy name we're going to do that, Jim? What do you think?
Yeah, it's a tough question. And, clearly working with developers is going to be a big part of the equation. And having people understand that when we do bring in development, that we're going to bring in development with the kind of amenities that make it a neighborhood where people want to be. So as you add homes, you also add little park areas and walkable neighborhoods and maybe mixed use some places, and try to make sure that you're thinking about livability, not just housing, density. So I don't like to think of it. I mean, it is density, but livability as well is extremely important.
All those things come into factor.
But I'm going to jump back to it. You didn't ask me, and it's okay, what I hope to accomplish, and I would have said if you had that one of the three things, in addition to affordable housing and generally and pushing the needle on environmental sustainability and resilience. I know that we're doing a comprehensive plan. We're also going to, and I think this is really important, look at the ordinances, the zoning ordinances at the same time. And I'm hoping that with the legal training that I had, I actually did practice public law.
What does the zoning ordinance mean? I mean, I understand what you're talking about, but let's get clarity specifically on what you're saying there.
Well, for example, and this is not at all the only example, there are places where the comprehensive plan would call for one type of housing and the zoning ordinances don't call for that at all. And of course that leads to confusion with the developers, and the developers don't know what they're looking at. And we also have need for guidance from the state as to what the packages are that are there to promote development. But I very much agree that the red tape is
well, that would be a huge step in the right direction of turning red tape into green tape. It's quite a bit, but if you get the comprehensive plan and the zoning ordinances to match, that's a heavy lift to get there.
Yeah,
that becomes very, and this was very much so discussed yesterday. But in Nelson County, do you guys match? Does your comp plan and your zoning match?
So, no. I mean, we talk about that regularly. I mean, my goal this coming year, and I was going to touch on it, is to redo the comprehensive plan, and we have to look at some.
You
of
have
those.
To do it this year, right?
Well, we have to do it, but we also haven't really done it well for 20 years.
Well, let's clarify that, because all you can just you could just rubber stamp and
just change the line, But we need to really do a solid change.
Well, you're going to have to. You guys are growing like crazy.
Well, it's a weird grow because overall we still shrunk. It's kind of a strange thing in Nelson.
Population shrunk?
Population in Nelson County shrunk. And it was, so it's this strange...
It shifted, though, a little bit, didn't it?
Become more affluent.
Yes. I would easily argue that the demographics on, the western side of 151 was a huge influence in the average median income. But overall, actually, Nelson actually shrunk. And it's kind of a weird situation. You had Afton shrink in population, which kind of blew my mind, how that happened. And then... But we had some more affordable areas, such as Shipman and Arrington, that actually did grow. So, it makes it a point where, hey, we need to emphasize, the other side of 29, where can affordable housing, and of course, it's hard to use the word affordable housing without the word density being nearby. That's
well, you have to, because
it's the only way you can do it. And
well, there's two ways: it's density, and then it's going to have to be heavily subsidized.
Heavily subsidized, and sometimes it's both.
Yeah, correct.
So, it's an interesting situation.
Well, why it's important, Jim, for this conversation, because, I mean, let's face it, more than likely you're going to be sitting behind the dais come January 1.
There's no opposition.
Yeah.
And his wife voted.
No, we're not sure.
Don't know how
we're not 100% sure if his wife voted.
Jeez.
Yeah, we were joking off air. As long as you get one vote, you're good, and we're not so sure about your wife. But the reality of it is on Wednesday, that we talked about this earlier, the Crozet master plan was approved, right? They're going to be moving forward with ultimately adopting or working through the comprehensive plan. But just to focus on the Crozet thing for the moment, most folks, the plan may have been approved, but every single one of these parcels that we're talking about have to be rezoned.
Yes.
Right. So it's important for folks who may not be familiar with the system that everybody kind of gets another bite of the apple,
Right.
when we go through this rezoning process. But I'm not so sure, and I haven't had a chance to dig into it. I'd have to ask somebody like Dr. Stacy Peffia and some of these folks, is that does the zoning and now the approved master plan for Crozet match? I don't think they do.
I don't think they do either.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I don't quote, I mean,
So now we've got a master
Yeah.
plan that says missing middle is allowed,
right.
but we don't have a zoning that
Yeah.
allows for it.
Right.
So this really
Middle
didn't
density.
Doesn't mean
accomplish very much,
Yeah.
right?
Until you change that zoning. Your
Right.
comprehensive plan is just words on paper.
Have you been through any zoning changes in your county?
Not
during your tenure?
We've changed minor things,
Yeah.
just definitions. But
Yeah,
we haven't.
talk about how complicated that is.
It's not easy. It's actually you're going to get a lot of public feedback.
I mean, look at what Charlottesville's going through.
I mean,
Yeah.
gosh,
Well, hell, that's just
And
the
that's just
comprehensive
a comprehensive plan.
That's
Yeah.
not even in the
That's
zoning
not
yet.
even the zoning, which is actually the meat and potatoes.
Right.
The comprehensive plan is just something nice that you look at. When you want to change things, you got to get in the zoning, and that's
Comprehensive plan is visionary.
yes,
As a lawyer,
Yeah.
the zoning is the teeth of the
The legal.
law. This
Yes.
is what you can do and can't do.
yes, yeah, and so it's it's a tough one.
Right. I want to clarify too that, we talked about red tape, green tape. It's not a question of just green tape to approve everything.
Sure.
Sometimes it's going to be making it very clear that this won't happen. So don't waste your time
Right.
trying to worry about, well, can we do this? Can we do that? Let's say this is what's negotiable and what's not. I mean, not that everything isn't somewhat, but I don't want to.
So as a recovering developer at the table,
Right.
that's all developers want, right? Just
Right.
give me the rules.
Right.
Where's my
Right.
boxes?
Right. That's
What can I do?
that's
What
we
can I
need to
do?
Right.
Let's clear up the confusion. If I go through A, B, C, and D, this is the process
back.
that I have to go through. And I'm excited that you're going to be sitting on the dais with the law degree, because you're going to help guide some of the fellow board of supervisors, hopefully, in that conversation. That's a good thing, I think.
They're bright people.
We'll
So-
get to these comments. Jesse, you got some very happy folks in Nelson County and in your district. Is it Cade
Way to go.
Gravitt?
Yes, Cade, yeah.
Go, Jesse. William Vassar, you got this, Jesse. Deborah Peterson Rose, giving you props as well.
love that.
William Vassar, good man, Campbell County conservative here, giving you love. Multiple folks are asking you to make a run for the Virginia State Senate. Mark Bolt, thank you, Jesse, for not promising a project and then making excuses why it's not working. You
Right.
keep the project on the table and alive. Keep up the good representation of our district. Jacob Neff, go Jesse. Devin Coombs, let's go Jesse, you're doing great work.
Oh, that's my
Marilyn
girlfriend,
Shiflett, talk about the Rockfish plan, waiting in the wings for
Right.
how long, Jesse?
Yes, the Rockfish plan. Thank you, Marilyn. And that's part of the comprehensive plan that we really need to. The Rockfish area is just, the dynamic has changed so much in 20 years. I mean, we went from
For those who are not familiar, just kind of
so
tell
just
a little bit where
and
Rockfish
just
is.
how I like to define it is, once you get 250 to 151, you hit the Nelson County border, go to Brent's Gap, Brent's Mountain, and that's 151 before you really get into Piney River area,
Got it.
right?
So that's before Wintergreen.
Yes, yeah. Well, no, that's after Wintergreen,
Wintergreen.
right after the turn on Beech Grove. So that particular area itself has just had some interesting growth. Of course, we went from a non-brewery town to all the brewery town in a matter of 15 years. It's made it for a phenomenal work environment and for craft beverages, and we've now been able to capitalize on that tourist side of Nelson County in a really healthy way. However, that's created a lot of issues with traffic. I mean, I'll be the first to admit, yes, traffic can be an issue. How much of that is passed through is a great question, but at the same time, I want to make sure that when there's an event or a festival, that it's a safe road. And how we do that. And the comprehensive plan, we're going to have to look at some tough stuff there and see how it is that we can see that growth happen in a healthy way in healthy locations, but also, making sure that Nelson County stays vibrant. Like I said, we believe it or not, still lost population, and that's with all of the successes in tourism that we've had. Our school population has still dropped dramatically. How do you get you really don't want a major increase because then that's huge capital improvements. But, you need at least stay at equilibrium so that you could justify your cost, and also a huge piece of that, and you'll find out, is the per pupil contribution from the state. And
Talk about that, because most folks
most
don't
people
really
don't
understand how
Yeah.
that works.
So what happens is
Please.
the state, when they provide funds to your local school, they do it oftentimes by a per pupil basis. So per pupil would be worth X amount of dollars, and they go by the average daily membership. Now, some of the things that they don't take into consideration is how many students maybe have a special need that we have to then take that child to somewhere else outside of Nelson, and those costs can be very, very hefty on us. And the state doesn't really help to absorb any costs with that. In my 4 years as a board of supervisor, I think we've lost close to 250 pupils in 4 years. Our school population was like 1,800, 1,900 from my first year in 2018. Now we're getting down to 16, 17.
So why is that happening?
You have a major shift in demographics again. Obviously the wintergreen community was never really going to...
Looking like me.
Yeah, right. The wintergreen community was never designed necessarily to be a starter family place. You can't look at it that way as the 1980s winter escape. It's 1990s, and that was the model, it was the developer's
Same as Lake
model.
Monticello.
Exactly. And so what you have happened is that happened with there. We had some fairly I would say restrictive zoning that came out in the early 2000s, and the amount of linear feet you need to have away from the road. You have setback requirements, and a lot of that deterred a lot of affordable housing. Is that to say that the student population still wouldn't have shrunk? Not necessarily, but it makes for a huge impact, especially on small localities. And I'm going to be dead honest. I mean, it's a shame to have the local governments go to war over how to fund the schools, because it's the state constitution that promises a free, high quality education, and us local government was supposed to figure out how we can, as a society, build business and how we can go along with that. So putting pressure on your
They
local.
call that unfunded mandates, right?
Unfunded mandates
And
are
you'll
also
learn
a
this.
disaster.
So
Oh,
the
no, I'm aware.
state says you've got to do something.
And they do
Delaware.
this trick. It's a really sneaky trick. They'll fund this one thing. Hey,
Yeah.
you get this thing.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, every year they take $20,000 away from
Oh,
it,
yeah.
or $100,000. And then after 3-4 years, you now have a position that your school system's gotten used to, and now you're having to absorb, $25,000 to $200,000 in expense. I mean, it's ridiculous, to see. And let me tell you, our state officials, they go to Richmond, they do these really
Sounds
great
like he's running for the
grandstanding.
state.
He's great. Jesse, you're killing it right now, man.
I'm not, but
I
these-
vote for you.
I appreciate it.
I don't live in Nelson County, but I'll vote for you anyway.
You the man. But these state officials will go to Richmond. They make this really half, special word, answer to something. They get all the press release out, and then the local government goes to war against the school board about how to pay for it. Shame on them. They make wars out of local governments.
In
that
our
should
world,
never
in our
exist.
real estate world, we deal with this all the time.
It's
Every
terrible.
year in January, they come
Terrible.
out with these new laws that we need to figure out.
And it
how
makes
to
them feel
implement.
good. And at the end of the day, if it's affordable housing, right, congratulations. It's like that new rule about how many inches of insulation you now need in your ceiling. But, me and you as the builder would say, well, really, windows are the biggest heat loss in the world. Adding another 10 inches of blown-in insulation is just bureaucracy. But it makes people sleep good at night, I guess. It makes somebody sleep good at night.
So
Not
when,
me.
when you're running for the Senate?
Stop.
How about this for Jim? Multiple things coming in for Jim. Let's get to Eric LaFontaine. Eric, we appreciate your patience here. So Eric LaFontaine owns Ben Barbecue in Scottsville. This is technically the Scottsville district.
Sure.
But still pertains to you here, Jim. With rural issues, what are Jim's plan, and we touched on this briefly, what are Jim's plans for fiber access for the south end of the county? With the grant of $2.8 million to the county and CenturyLink, how does that help improve Scottsville and Esmont area since CenturyLink sold this area to another company?
Oh, yeah.
I have not heard or seen from AEP about them adding Firefly for the Esmont area a few miles away from the Walton Mountain train tracks run through Esmont. That question for you.
Okay. I appreciate the question, and I'm very concerned about how things have been going down there with CenturyLink, with the transfer. My understanding, and I've got a lot to learn about how the broadband world works, but my understanding is that ABA and the consortium will be able to work with areas that do not have broadband
Right.
and bring it in regardless of, whether it previously been designated for one particular carrier, if that carrier is not providing it, which is one of the reasons why I think it's going to be really important for people to let us know what kind of speeds they're getting so we can be assured that it's really broadband that they're getting. These are areas where we're going to bring in broadband with whoever can provide it. And there are going to be a lot of pieces coming together because some of the fiber is actually being laid through Dominion. The power companies are putting in
their easements. In their easements.
Main lines that are leading then to the residential lines that go in afterwards.
So I would encourage Albermarle Broadband Authority. Also, the Planning District Commission has a broadband authority, which is more regional. I literally, as those who may have watched, handed an article over to Jesse to read. So there's some great information on it, which I pulled off this morning to talk about what broadband and what's coming in here. But look, this is something we've been preaching on the soapbox forever on Real Talk, and Jerry and I for 220 shows. How many shows it is? Get involved. The sources are there.
Right.
Watch the meetings, and I'm constantly amazed at the Planning District Commission. There's literally nobody when Jesse calls for public comment. So please come in.
Please
There's a lot of
participate.
discussion that happens at these. A lot of good information.
And constituents have good ideas.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's under actually your constituent isn't doesn't have a break. No, they actually have sincere and high quality ideas that we always sometimes we miss because we're stuck at the 10,000-foot view and forget what's on the ground. So listening to your constituent on how to address some of that is always, please.
I always
to the
come away
public
a little
comment.
bit smarter.
Yes.
Which doesn't take much
Yes.
for me, but
Yes.
Oh, stop. This is from Carolyn. My mom's lived in the North Garden area her entire life. She is now 87 years old, and health is a big concern. We are close, about 25 minutes away, but 25 minutes can still be a long time when it comes to health issues. She does not have a working phone line and relies on a medical alert button for health and safety. And when that is not connected to the internet, she has no one to make sure she's alive and safe. So that's a comment that she left there.
Thank
Niels,
you. 2021, this should not be
should not be happening.
No.
Yeah, it should not be happening.
That's-
So this is from Lauren for Jim, and we thought this was going to come on the feed. Mr. Andrews, please offer your strategy or your vision for Biscuit Run Park. We live down 5th Street Extended in Mosby Mountain, and it would be nice to use the park that is across the street from our neighborhood.
This has been going on for years.
It's been going on a long time.
For 2 decades.
Well, yeah, it's a complicated acquisition, I think, and making it a reality. My knowledge of this particular issue isn't as deep as it probably should be, but it is my understanding that there are appropriations that are making this a reality. It's just taking a lot longer than it probably should have. And so Biscuit Run is coming online. Put it
Jim,
that way.
I was just thinking of the comment drinking from a fire hose. That's kind of what you're going to end up doing
That's all
here
right. That's all right.
pretty quickly with all these complicated things. I will add something a little bit to that. I had a great presentation about Southwood, and Southwood backs up to up to Biscuit Run, and
some of Southwood property was part of Biscuit Run at one point. So.
Correct. Yeah. And thank you, Jim, because that's where I was going to go. Thank you.
Okay.
But look at this, chemistry's working. But most folks don't know, but the size of that project, because you're going to be looking at the rezoning of Phase 2, because that's coming in.
Coming up.
That's well over 1,000 residential units.
It's huge.
Most folks do not know that. So, and then backing up, and I believe there's connections into Biscuit Run. Is that not?
That's right,
Yes.
and it's going to be,
Yes.
when finished, the second most densely populated neighborhood in Albemarle County, behind which one?
Well, Forest Lakes, according to
It's
Mr.
never-
Neil Williams.
We just learned that.
We learned that.
On Real Talk.
Neil Williams tends to correct us regularly,
Yeah.
which
good thing.
we need.
Forest Lakes 1, and it sounds like Southwood's going to be 2.
Southwood would be 2. It depends on what the ultimate density is going to
To say,
be.
how many is it?
But the neat thing about Southwood is it's going to be mixed income.
Yeah.
right? Which is pretty unique. It's going to be a pretty large project out that way, and I think the success of Biscuit Run and the success of Southwood are interconnected. Would you agree with that, Jim?
Yes, but I think, Southwood is a entity unto itself.
Sure.
I mean, it's a very large, ambitious project. It's of tremendous potential.
What's the largest habitat community in the United States?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
How many is it?
But it is a big project,
It is
and
a
there
big
are
project.
many issues that have arisen as they've gotten
boy.
started with what was underground, and not being
course.
surprised that,
Yeah.
that there were issues. So there, it's not an inexpensive proposition either.
So it's how you deal with these surprises is what makes the difference, and
Right.
I'm confident that.
I mean, my hope for Biscuit Run is that it's not, just obviously connected to Southwood, but becomes interconnected to the entire urban ring, if you will, through, connections to the Ravenna Trail and other trails, so that we have as much interconnectivity among our parks in that area as we can.
Well, you said our parks, and I think, Jerry, you might want to give a quick history for those who do not know the history about Biscuit Run and about a 2-minute or minute version of it.
I mean, I'll give it to them in Cliff Notes, 20 seconds.
20
And you can offer some perspective on this
Sure,
too.
sure.
All right.
Hunter Craig, the developer, the businessman, the multifaceted entrepreneur, formed a consortium, if you may, and took some private investment money, and the plan was to develop Biscuit Run into a nice little neighborhood of single-family detached homes with amenities like the park as the focal point of the neighborhood. And then what happened, Keith?
Oh, yes. The time of great unpleasantness.
Yes.
Unpleasantness. I can't even say it, Neil.
The time of great unpleasantness happened, a.k.a. the Depression of 2008, 2009.
Thank
tough
you.
time.
Thank you for not using the word recession, because in my mind,
It was a depression.
It was a
It was a
depression.
depression. And then next thing we know, there was, for lack of better phrase, a bailout. And the bailout included some tax credits, if you may. The Commonwealth offered these tax credits as the bailout. And then the Commonwealth, who's not in the business of running localized parks, chose to get Albemarle County involved.
Well, it was a little bit different than that, right? And Jim, you can jump in because you really know the history of this a little bit on that end of it. The state just decided it
didn't want to do it.
Well, it just decided it didn't want another state park. Right. And talking about, as we said earlier, about these unfunded mandates, the state went, here you go, Albemarle County. Good luck.
Yeah, there's the land, build the park.
And didn't provide the financing or the mechanisms. And that's kind of where we're stuck at the moment, right?
That is where we're stuck.
This will take up a substantial amount of money to turn this into whatever the current vision is.
Well, and the most
Right.
frustrating aspect, and I'll get out of your way here, the most frustrating aspect is we have a park that taxpayers are paying to maintain that they cannot use right now. That's what's happening. Because tax dollars are going to not maintaining it like it's a public park, if you may, but there is maintenance going on in this park, and we cannot use this park.
There are probably some people using it, but yeah.
Off the books.
Off the
Off
books.
the books.
No,
There's a couple of neat bike trails. In
There's
there.
one biking
It
trails
is.
there.
Well,
Yeah.
Not open to the public.
I'm trying to remember the details, but I know there was a pot of money that was expected to come in to pay for that, and it didn't happen. Monies that had been set aside for other parks then got moved over to do Biscuit Run Park. And yes, it is on the books, and it's not really open, but it's happening, and I really honestly
the
believe
number
it
is
will be there.
substantial. The number is substantial
Yes.
to turn this into something, and that's where we talked earlier. These I'm using the term unfunded mandates, but the state did not do Albemarle County a huge favor by handing this off to you all and not funding it. And somehow or another, that we've got to come up with the funding so we can move this forward. Because Jerry's mentioned this more than a couple hundred times. Talk about raising revenue, right? Incremental revenue. I mean, if that was a state park, you can hold, biking, mountain biking events.
Sports tourism. Do a public partnership with Core and Capshaw and have a little music venue over there, a Fridays After 5 type setting where people pay to enjoy music and that money goes to the county. I'm a businessman here and very libertarian in my thinking. You, I know, embody that as well, Jesse. Why not create an opportunity for incremental tax dollars with how much acreage is it, Keith? I mean, we're talking
thousands,
like
huge.
It's ginormous. I mean, I'm trying to.
So, by the way, Jim, I'm not allowed to use that word. Huge. Can't say it.
Sorry.
That is the fourth rule on Real
missed that
Talk.
one.
Smith can't use that word.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's a great idea, but Nelson County is going to beat you to doing sports.
Well, that's what I was just about to go to. No, I was just about to go to. Seriously, Jesse,
Yeah.
what do you've got in the works that's similar
Absolutely.
to something like that?
I mean, as we talk about how to attract younger families, to Nelson County, both it's about retention of, families and also how is it that we can get a family that wants to start their life in Nelson.
So you want to do like a live, work, stay, like...
I think work is going to be an interesting concept with the work from home aspect. I mean, that's changed entirely how businesses operate now in Nelson and people. I mean, you got some top-notch executives who work in Northern Virginia, but now they're just working from their house, and they go up Northern Virginia a couple days a week, and all they got is a camera on them every day, So, other things we got in the works is looking at how we can create more opportunity for our youth. Our kids need more opportunity in Nelson. I want to see some level of a sports facility that.
Man, don't do this to us,
I'm already
Jesse
telling you.
Rutherford. Don't do
Listen,
this to us.
we beat everyone else around us to
You
the
have
internet,
been.
and we're going to beat y'all to this because I think it's going to be a great
And
opportunity.
that whole marijuana thing, too. You
Right.
kinda started that a long time ago.
That was back in the
crushing.
1950s,
Oh,
right?
got
No,
it,
been in
It's legal now, so
Yeah,
in case you
yeah.
want.
Go with the sports center idea.
Sports center. So,
Yeah.
really, we want to have an aspect where our
Where would you put that?
there's some very confidential conversations
Got
of
it.
where that might go. But
Let me ask it a different way. It would be close to
No.
Jim's. Got it.
no,
Ugh.
sorry, Jim. But we are kind of looking
So that narrowed
at
it down a little bit.
yeah, look in the middle. So trying to find a way that we can have that sport conversation and have our kids, have a swimming pool, have an outdoor swimming pool. We want to have that opportunity for it. We want to give more opportunity in the sports athletics because,
So you think that might reverse your numbers for the schools? You think?
I do believe that will help us, create. And also, I want our youth to have more opportunity in that regard. I mean, they deserve it. I mean, if you grow up in Schuyler, you got to drive a long ways to get to any sports facility. Albemarle's not an option. Scottsville's not an option, really. So, somewhere near the school system so that they can participate and have a better, hey, for some, it's an opportunity to get into college. For others, it's, about being healthy too. It helps encourage our folks to have a little bit healthier of a lifestyle. So,
I love it, Jesse. I want to
Yeah,
throw.
for sure.
I'll throw this out there, and then Jim, your thoughts here. There is not a single youth sports tournament from
In this
a
area?
regional or multi-state faceted tournament in this area. Keith, you know this. Your daughter was a Division I swimmer. I grew up as a kid going to Charlotte for 3 tournaments a year. Mom and Dad would bring the credit card and open checkbook, hotel stays, restaurants, shopping, and then we would not tax the infrastructure, schools, roads. We would leave.
Yeah.
We would give them money and leave.
Yeah, and it's not loud. It's not an event. It's not like you got huge decibel issues on the outskirts. It's a bunch of folks out there having a great time, going to the breweries at the end to celebrate, their kids win.
And then leave.
And then leave.
Yeah.
Right.
Did that for decades.
Yeah.
Right?
Decades. I mean, like literally decades.
Yeah.
And always went every place else. It was never, I never could understand. My daughter's a former Division I athlete, swimmer, a sprinter. I could never understand why we weren't doing it. We have a class,
Of UVA.
UVA,
Yeah.
cool. But we never could do it because there was just not enough hotel infrastructure.
Huh.
I had a client fly in yesterday from LA to take a look at some stuff. His daughter's going to UVA. We're looking at some homes and all that kind of great stuff. And he ended up having to stay almost 45 minutes outside of town because this is parents' weekend on that end of it because there was no hotels. We're about roughly 4,000 hotel rooms short.
Really?
Yeah, we're about 4,000.
Huh.
Brown
Didn't
Shore.
know that about here.
And that's the reason why every time I would ask, hey, how come we don't have a swim meet here? Well,
Right.
there's no hotels.
Huh.
Because there's a little bit too much red tape to
Sure.
take to go do that. To go back to the red tape thing, Jim, and you watched the show enough to probably know this. Well, how much is it? 25% of
24%.
24. Thank you.
You taught me that.
24% of new construction is regulatory
It's
costs.
true. So true.
Not that, and I agree with you, Jim, 100%. They're there for a reason. But
Some.
if there's some way that can get reduced,
Yeah.
what happens with that? That just goes to the bottom line of the buyer, right?
Yeah.
You know, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to add on that.
I mean, you're a builder.
Yeah, I mean, I want to add on that because, truth be told, some of those regulatory burdens that you're told really help the situation was just some lobbyist talked to some delegate or some state senator, and then even some local government too, and said, hey, this is a good idea. They went to the conference, they went and had that meeting, you implement it, then all of a sudden, that particular industry is, increasing per home, 20% in revenue because they added more regulations. So just because it sounds good, it's like things with good titles for bills doesn't mean that's a good thing. It's always in the weeds,
What do you think, Jim?
Well,
Any of these topics?
It is in the weeds. The devil's in the details.
Absolutely.
And I think that, every one of these things has to be looked at carefully. It's easy
Yes.
to make broad statements.
Yep.
And obviously the numbers,
sure.
24% is very high, but
Yep.
each one has to be looked at.
Absolutely.
And,
It's roughly
and some of them are done by the state, and
Yep,
we have
some of
to
them
worry
are.
about our lobbying ability,
Absolutely.
which is
And-
another part. Legislative agenda has been discussed at recent meetings
That is a
several
huge
times.
thing.
And the Dillon rule.
The
which
Dillon
we
rule
will
limits
not
what
get
we can
into
do. Right.
Quite
Team
a
home
bit.
rule here.
But what I would hope that what sometimes we see on the private side of the house is this paralysis from analysis. So at some point, somebody's going to have to make a
I agree.
decision to move forward. Which brings me into Jim. It's and both of you guys jump into this because I see this for several decades of working with elected officials. Sometimes you have to make a tough decision for the betterment of
Yes.
the county
Yep.
than the district. So walk you through that because you've been in this boat a couple of times. Walk me through that
I
decision.
mean, how I've always looked at in my philosophy is I'm always district first, best I can. But obviously, there's some times where it's like the 10,000-foot view. Hey, this is a jobs issue. Hey, this is an opportunity issue. We have to look at certain, whether it's a development, a business, special use permit, et cetera. And you look at it from that lens too. You have to say, I understand this is tough. It's got to go there. We just lost 300 people in population. We lost 300 pupils in this area. Some people do have to get it's like my favorite term, changing the character of the land. The most broad thing that you'll.
So what does that mean?
It's another way of just saying that something changed.
Yeah, they don't want change.
There's something changed and they don't like it. We could talk about NIMBYism. We could talk about cavers. And then,
What was that second one?
Citizens Against Virtually Everything. I call them cavers.
You
never heard that one?
First time I've
That's
ever.
virtually everything. Okay.
Yeah, and I say that because you're going to deal with that a lot. And some people bring good points, and when they have concern comments, traffic is one that we always deal with on 151, and that issue needs to be dealt with or without.
Well, let's talk
a certain
about traffic
project.
because this is impacting both of you two guys. That roundabout starting at 151 and 250.
It's going to be interesting.
So talk about that. Why is that going to be
I
interesting?
mean, roundabouts is not necessarily a new technology, but I'll be interested to see how a tractor trailer. I'm not an engineer, and I'll never
Well,
claim
I'm a
to
big
be.
fan of roundabouts.
Yeah, and I mean, you're Fluvanna. You got like 50 of them.
He got the roundabout.
Yeah, you got
he
like-
was the
you
leader
got
on
roundabout.
that.
So, I have not seen it in that environment, how it works coming down Afton Mountain. I'm optimistic because we've criticized the engineers on that over and over again. And they're like, look at it. And there's some graphics they can show you of how movement works.
It's a matter of size.
Yes.
Right? So if your diameter is
Yeah.
small,
Yeah.
it
But
doesn't work so well.
Yeah, we all know that one piece of fence right across from 151 that just never exists there because it keeps getting run into. I recently saw someone on social media say they wanted to make a Facebook page for just that fence, in its opinion, of a roundabout.
I think that's a great idea.
I think it's a great idea. I hope by the end of this, somebody has already done that. Whether you like me or not, please make sure someone makes that just to make everyone happy. But yeah, I think I'm not an engineer, but I'm cautiously optimistic it's going to work for that area.
What I'm trying to figure out is, because I know a little bit about what it's going to take to build one of these
It's not cheap.
on these things. But Jim, this is going to take a lot. Does your district go up that way, or you're just shy of? How
I think
far
we're
up do you
shy
go?
of that.
A little shy of that,
that's
but you're awfully
Dan
close, aren't
Malik.
you?
There are people who call Crozet home that are in
Yeah,
our
in your
district.
In your district.
Yeah.
So,
Not far.
well,
But
I'm
not-
just thinking
not
about it
250
from a practical perspective, Jim. That's going to take a couple of years to build.
Oh, what are you talking about? With this environment with contractors and supply shortages?
So, Jim, how's that going to impact that whole area in your mind, right? I mean, does that make any sense? I mean,
That construction projects are
yeah.
disruptive.
Yeah.
Thank you, Professor.
Yeah.
I was trying to think of a word.
Trying to make it.
All I'm trying to do is get a C, sir, in this class. That's all I'm
no,
trying to do.
it's complicated. I mean, I have to say I have to drive through the Washington D.C. area on 66
You mean the parking lot? 66?
regularly, and I don't know when they're ever going to finish construction. So,
Right.
that doesn't mean that construction's bad. They're going to be improvements.
Well, they'll bring
and
a
you
bunch
need
of
them,
jobs,
so,
that's for sure.
but
over in
it's
that
not
area.
about the jobs as it is about improving
Safety.
the traffic,
Sure.
improving
Safety is a
safety,
huge thing. Yep.
improving the flow, making it possible for people to get from one place to another.
So we've all kind of agreed, as long as your wife votes for you, right, you're going to be sitting on the end of the dais. So you're a lawyer, you're a physicist, right? Did I get that
Yes.
right? How are these skills going to help you make decisions? Because you're going to be asked a lot of high-level things that you may, and I know a little bit about physics, engineers, and you're going to have to probably make some decisions without all the information.
Oh, absolutely.
So let's talk about how your decision, not politics, anything. What's your decision-making process look like?
Right. Sort of the high-level view is in doing these things, being a physicist, being a lawyer, I had to work hard. And I couldn't have been afraid to learn new things because there's always new things to learn in both these fields. And I want to listen hard to people and to take advice. I'm not here to revolutionize things. I want to listen and make progress. I will bring to the decision making, obviously, that I hope that hard work, the listening, the willingness to learn new things, but also some values. And those values require me to look at things sometimes from the environmental perspectives, from the equity perspective, but overall for the good of the people of Albemarle County.
And maybe Jesse can offer some advice to this.
I was going to give you a couple on there.
on that end of it. But this is probably most toughest question I'm going to ask you today.
Go for it.
You're going to upset half of the people and make other half happy.
Every time.
Well, the other half may even be
Or
lukewarm.
lukewarm.
or lukewarm,
Or just won't notice
or-
one way or the other.
Half the people are going to be angry, then the other half will be, I don't really, ambivalent.
And then you have
Yeah.
all the outsiders screaming and yelling at you.
Right.
They're not even part of your
Yeah.
district. I mean, this is a big part of the job, right,
Right.
Jesse? So
Absolutely.
let's talk about how how that's going to go.
So my 2 cents, and I think nobody ever gives you like the impression of like everybody likes you the day you get elected, by the way,
Oh, good.
And then as soon as you start voting, people get upset, and that's reasonable. I think some of the most important things is having obviously that open dialogue you talk about. Us in local government, it's the only branch of government in my mind that has the ability to actually have one-on-one conversations with almost any advocate or anti, whatever it may be. And so you could have healthy, constructive conversations. And I always encourage all those things, so long as, you're not being ridiculed and whatnot. It's also important to, when you make a vote, whatever that might be, it's okay to be passionate about it. Even if there will be a group that's going to, passionately disagree with you. It's important. It's how we operate, and it's governing.
I want to be able to support my decisions with reasoning. I want to be able to think them through and be able to explain why I felt that this is the decision I came to and why I felt it was the right one.
And one huge thing that I've learned, it's okay to change your mind sometimes.
That's what I was literally just going to ask you.
It is okay.
How often do you do that?
I've learned over the last 3 years, of course, you could be quick to say yes. I've also been definitely there'll be some particular whatever it might be, and I got a particular impression from then you vote on it, and it's like, wait, this is not what I thought it was. So being cautiously, cautious before you make a stance yet. I think that's one thing that I've learned is, try to make the decision if you're for or against it, later towards the end so that you have all the information.
Right.
Just because there's a website doesn't necessarily that's the reality. Just because a constituent said there's going to be this doesn't mean that's going to be in front of the Planning Commission.
What was Reagan's thing? Trust but
verify.
Trust but verify.
And I want to listen to people, but I don't want to just
Absolutely.
listen to someone because they're the loudest voice in the room.
Absolutely.
So on
Absolutely.
a personal note, I actually talked to my wife about our conversation.
Huh?
Jim and I were behind the Iron Curtain, not quite at the same amount of time, but that
Very
was
different capacities.
But that was a really
tourist.
we had a really
As a college
interesting
student.
conversation over a cup of coffee, which I got to talk about some parts of the world that I lived in the time
Right.
that doesn't exist anymore. So thank you for sharing that
Yeah.
with me. But you might want, most folks, that's a pretty cool story to tell that you were behind the Iron Curtain in Moscow in the late 70s.
You make it sound like more than it
Like
was.
you're a secret spy.
Right.
Right.
I was in college, and our college had a
Oh,
January.
I don't know about that. I used to hang out
January
with guys
plan.
that said they were in that
Right.
they were in college,
And
but they weren't.
geography professor organized a trip. We flew into Prague. We traveled to,
This was 78.
this was 78, January 78. And I remember the snowstorm we came home in. I was stuck in New Jersey for 2 nights
Let me
just trying to
see.
get home.
Jersey, Moscow, Jersey.
Right.
Sorry.
So yeah, we toured from Prague to Berlin to Warsaw to Leningrad.
Oh, wow.
Now, at that time,
So
Leningrad.
does that experience
back to
do you
St.
think
Petersburg?
do you think that experience will impact some of what you're about ready to do?
Leave the Lenin
It's
philosophy.
a stretch.
What'd you say?
Leave the Lenin philosophy
Yeah,
there.
Okay.
It was
Moving on.
cultural experience.
Valid.
Pretty.
He texted me earlier,
kind
said
of a
I'm doing a
footnote.
great job. Now I got
Delete that.
now I got
Give you
you.
the poop emoji right there.
You suck.
No.
I got some questions for Jim.
So I
here.
reached for the fences, and by the way, way to go,
I didn't mean to
Dodgers.
let you
That was
down
a
on
great. That was a great game yesterday.
Oh, absolutely. So Eric LaFontaine says the tire plant, Dr. Hertz Tire Plant in Scottsville, could make a very good sports epicenter or facility. So Eric, I think that's a great idea. I wanted to acknowledge. How about transportation? We've gone an hour here and we haven't talked transportation and how transportation needs to be more reliable, approachable, consistent, ubiquitous, and how it could potentially breed affordability from a housing standpoint in the area. And this is a multi-jurisdiction topic. I mean, it's not just tied to Albermarle. So Jim, anywhere you want to go on transportation?
It's a multimodal topic. There's certainly need for transportation options in the in urban areas, the developed areas, because we want to make sure that people can live in walkable neighborhoods, find access to bike trails, but also have public transportation options that work, that are on time, that are reliable. And we have to work with others on this. Obviously, Charlottesville has a big role to play with CAT and then Jaunt and the other entities that are involved in transportation. In the other regions, well, to the extent that we are calling Crozet and other areas as development areas, growing the density, we want to be very mindful of the transportation issues that are going to come with that. Obviously, people living in Crozet are very worried about the new Crozet master plan because getting in and out of Crozet is not trivial.
Brutal.
Right.
And so there need to be ways to address that. I'm open to ideas because
Well, and
that's an important one.
That's the reason why the rezoning process is so important, because that whole conversation is going to end up coming up. But you've got this Crozet connector that Jaunt is doing,
Right.
Which is, I think it's Jaunt, right? That Jaunt is doing it, which is awesome, which kind of brings folks back and forth. I see that going back and forth. But I appreciate the regionality, and I think, Jim, you'll hopefully, I've always been promoting regionality. Nelson County isn't really in on its own. Fluvanna County isn't on its own. Albemarle County isn't on its own.
Right.
We're frankly all in this together. And I would encourage you, I know you realize you're going to have to represent your district and your county, but I would encourage you to look more regionally in your thinking and your communications, because it will, what decisions you make will impact me in Fluvanna County. So any thoughts on regionality, how important that is to you? Or
How
not?
important it is to work together.
Yeah.
There are so many ways in which regionality.
And I got another poopy emoji, so I'm striking 1,000.
Well, yeah. I mean, there are many of these different entities that are joint task force, joint commissions, and we get advice from them, but we also have to act together. And I hope, to further that as we go forward.
Well, I would
So
encourage you
thrilled
to
meet
get more
Jesse
as
and-
involved as possible and all that stuff.
I mean,
I think we should talk about, we just brought up Charlottesville's name here.
Yep.
Choosing my words correctly here.
Since I'm just batting 1,000, you want me to try it?
Charlottesville's local government is going through some tumultuous times right now, and I think that's applicable and safe. Albermarle County, and we'll leave it at that. How's that?
Okay.
Albermarle County and the city of Charlottesville have to do quite a bit of business together. And how is this tumultuous time, this turmoil that Charlottesville is going through, are you concerned how that could impact governance in Albemarle County? What can we learn from Charlottesville and this soap opera? Kathy Galvin and Lloyd Snook will be on the I Love CVille show today at 12:30 to discuss this very topic.
Good.
Your thoughts on this?
Well, first of all, I'm very happy that Albemarle County has not been in this situation.
Stable.
I think we have a very stable
Yes.
board of supervisors. We've got good people. County executive Jeff Richardson's doing a fabulous job. The staff are great. I'm looking forward to working with the people who have been doing things for Albemarle County. I don't think that the city of Charlottesville is in quite as bad a straits as the news would suggest. I think they've certainly gone through some significant turmoil in leadership, but I think that the future is hopeful. I'm liking what I'm hearing from candidates who are likely to be on the city council, and I'm hoping we can work together. I think we can. So.
What do you want to add to that, Keith?
Yeah, so...
Because you got stuff you want to add.
Yeah, so Jim, I appreciate it, and I think you're going to bring certain tools to the table to help. But let's just call it what it is. The city of Charlottesville, if it was a corporation, would be, and which it is technically. It has no organizational chart.
Yeah.
Right, and it needs help. And I think Albemarle County, we had Ned and Diantha sitting in these both seats in here. So you're going to have to help the city to do that. But I want to kind of go back a little bit to the, go ahead, Jim, you wanted to say something?
Well, I just want to say that, one of the things about government that I think doesn't get a fair shake is that sometimes people think, they don't like government, or that government is this, government's that. Government is the people, and it's going to be impacted by the people who are interested and engaged. And Charlottesville has a tremendous amount of talent,
Without a
and
doubt.
people who are looking out for the best interest of Charlottesville and the area. And I think that that's going to.
Well, we don't point fingers here, so I'm not
Right.
pointing any fingers
No,
or anything
I'm
like
just
that.
I'm just trying to say I think we'll get past some of these
Well,
difficulties, but I totally agree that that's,
Well, my hope is that your board and the new city council will be able, because I as much as you represent your district, that was going back to this regionality thing.
Oh, yeah.
Charlottesville and Albemarle are attached at the hip. But I'll have a next door neighbor who works. Name I will leave out. What he does I will leave out. But he works for the city, and he's I don't want to use the word demoralized, but he doesn't know who's in charge.
Right.
Right.
Well,
What
I'm
am
not
I
sure
supposed
who's
to
in charge
do?
either.
Nobody, and so he's making decisions at this level that he doesn't know if it's what the city council wants
Right.
or the executive wants, because there's no structure in that.
Well, and this week in closed session, they're picking an interim city manager just to get to December 31.
Yeah.
And then the new council, the expectation is Pinkston and Wade are going to be on the dais. I think that's safe to say. With Pinkston and Wade on the dais, they then pick a more permanent city manager in January.
So I think I know who this interim city manager is going to
For
be.
now to December 31?
I think I know
You care
it.
to share?
No, but all
Because
I
I'm going to ask Lloyd that.
Yeah, you can
Yeah.
I will not take the. All I know was this particular individual was supposed to be on my panel yesterday, and now he's not, and I got a different individual. So I'm putting
Okay.
2 and 2 together.
Okay,
And that's what I
okay.
came up with.
Right.
But let's go back to red tape and green tape, and I want you to jump in here for a second. I had a conversation with a couple of builders in Albemarle County. So just something to put in the back of your mind so when you're moving forward. We've got a client, we're trying to have a project built. They are 3 to 4 months behind in issuing building permits.
I know.
Oof.
That's insane.
Yeah.
And what you're not,
And some of that is the staffing issues that the county's faced,
Yeah.
in addition to whatever the city's
Right.
facing. We're not, fully staffed at the county.
so it's even worse than that because the CO, the certificate of occupancy, is taking another month. So there's
costs.
between 3 to 5 months.
It's 3 to 5 months.
How is it in
Yeah.
Nelson County?
We're great. We're
I know,
perfect.
of course.
I've been hearing a lot of this lately, and I can push back, but I'm trying to be.
Because of your fiber internet.
Because of the
Please.
fiber internet, it's streamlined.
Yeah, right,
Anyways,
right.
no.
Everything is fiber,
I'm-
right?
you
The
know-
beer, I think, comes out of the
You know,
fiber.
it just comes, run a pipeline to every house. Yeah.
But how long does it take to get a building permit in Nelson?
I think it's just a couple weeks, but that's standard. Just to touch on, when you run into permitting issues, if you're in the affordable housing world, 3 months is a lifetime.
Without doubt.
Because somebody's job could be altered, somebody could get sick, their pay stubs get adjusted, then all of a sudden, they're losing their permanent financing on the back end. It's 3, and that's just 3 months on top of the
Well, just
already
think about the
issues with
carrying
digging.
costs,
Yeah.
right? That go back to this 24, 25%. That's part of that.
Oh,
That's
yeah, no, I
the
agree.
carrying costs for that.
And then
the carrying costs for
you're
that.
floating so much stuff at that time, and all of a sudden, or currently the construction industry, we are in such a supply and workforce shortage that you're adding months and months on jobs. I mean, at this point, then you add a 3-month wait time for a permit. Holy cow! That's before you even started touching the dirt. It gets it's very complex and it gets very expensive. So, if you're going to talk about affordable housing, you got to be making some
absolutely,
adjustments. from that.
absolutely.
Yeah. Support your local building office, please.
Right. We need the staff to be able to handle these things. We need the rules to be clear and make it so that the staff can do their jobs efficiently.
How about the relationship with the University of Virginia, Jim? What would you like to see with that relationship? How do we optimize the relationship? We say often it's not the city of Charlottesville, it's the city of UVA. Albemarle County. UVA is in Albemarle County. A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah.
UVA is Albemarle County.
It's interesting.
yeah.
The client I was with yesterday, I told him
about
that it
some-
blew his mind.
Blows people's mind.
Okay.
Yeah. What would you like to see with that dynamic?
I'd like to see stronger relationships, more communication, more representation, sort of the county on different aspects of decision-making that combines the city, the county, and UVA. That said, I think very highly of Jim Ryan, and I think he's doing a good job, so I'm looking forward to being able to work more with UVA.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's the responsibility for UVA for affordable housing? What's the responsibility for UVA for transportation? What's the responsibility for UVA for leading vision in Albemarle County from a governance standpoint? Do they have responsibility?
Are you asking a legal question or a moral question?
I'm asking a question of a gentleman and a scholar who is going to be on the Board of Supervisors.
I think that.
Do you have your bar in Virginia? So you got to be careful if you don't.
This is not legal advice.
I think the university needs to be involved in decisions regarding housing, affordable housing, and transportation. And I do hear some things that suggest to me that UVA is going to play a role in the future on affordable housing. It's probably going to take longer than I would like, than most people would like for that to happen. To the extent that it happens because 2Ls end up in the dorms, and that frees up some things. Whether that's really going to free up affordable housing is debatable, but it's a process, and UVA is talking, I think, the right direction. So I'm very, very hopeful and look forward to working with him.
What do you think, Keith?
Well, as those who know, I'm on the community engagement team for their initiative to do that. And I think you're going to hear, and I know very shortly, a couple of months, some site selections on that end of it. Mm-hmm. But it was interesting. One of the topics I think Jim and I spoke about when we had a cup of coffee was about bringing second years on campus.
On grounds.
On grounds, thank you. I apologize. On
You had
grounds.
second years, though.
I had second years. I was half right. It's only got half a booby there. Emoji. And it's interesting because I want to wrap it around this conversation that I had with this client yesterday. And, I think from my perspective, and you're in the housing business, so you jump in, Jesse, but from my perspective, if that happens, all that's going to happen is the circle is just going to get a little tighter.
Yep.
But not much tighter. And what I mean by that is and this was happening with this particular buyer was looking for something to buy for both their daughters that they wanted to be walking distance to UVA. Instead, we are now looking outside because that's where we can afford. So if the second years go on, maybe something will come in and they'll move in, but it's not going to make a huge impact.
And my understanding is that UVA is talking about a broader, deeper plan.
Well, they're talking between
housing.
1,000 and 1,500 units, right? And as Jim, as you mentioned, just so there's under no misunderstanding here, that's going to take many, many, many years before it happens. Even if they designate a parcel, because then they have to go through the public engagement process of it and possibly rezoning, depending on. This is an important distinction. If it's owned by the foundation, it has to go through rezoning. If it is owned by the city, it's going to be by the university. It's very, very different. two different sets of rules. But as a lawyer, off base, we probably have to talk about this. I think if they own the land and they bring somebody else on it, I'm not so sure that changes that dynamic of having to go through rezoning. But there'll be a community engagement process for it. So they're at the table. Personally 10 years to get them there. Jesse helped us with this, with the Regional Housing Partnership, but it is not moving as fast as I'd like it to move, for sure.
And in this particular environment, I mean, it's not easy to expedite any of those things.
No.
Keith, this is a good show. Jim, we appreciate you joining us here. We went to about 11:37.
Okay.
Nice.
Jesse Rutherford, it's our pleasure. Jesse Rutherford, many in your district in Nelson County. Proud of you. Larry Wells, giving you props. Kimmy Kruskamp, giving you some props as we speak right now. Amy Bender, Megan Patton, Colleen Owens, Willie Deutsch, Angel Ramos, Devin Coombs. The list continues. The show, for those that are asking, especially those in the media, will be archived online on ilovecville.com and on every social media platform known to mankind. We put the content on these screens, and you guys can engage and watch the content as you see fit. Keith Smith put the panel and the round table together.
Thank you.
My friend, job well done.
Yeah, thank you. Get out and vote, folks.
Yes.
Get out and vote. Elections matter.
Early vote if you need to.
Next Friday, there's rumor that Batman and Robin may be here next Friday.
In costume.
They may show up. They may show up. And we may do a Batman and Robin get out the vote push. Who knows?
All right.
I like that.
It could happen next Friday.
Yeah. I'm ready. Keith Smith, Jesse Rutherford, Jim Andrews, Judah Wickhauer. My name is Jerry Miller. This is Real Talk on Fridays, presented by Dave Fafara, Shenandoah Joe's, Coffee with the candidates, Jesse and Jim. Thank you for joining us on Real Talk. We will see you in approximately 52 minutes on the I Love CVille show with Kathy Galvin and Lloyd Snow.
That's going to be a rocking show.
You guys have a good morning.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Well done, guys. He's going to tell